Last year at the Grand Prix of Cleveland, Alex Zanardi and Gilles de Ferran put on a superb display of wheel-to-wheel racing to settle the win. First, the Italian grabbed the lead on the last lap, then overshot the corner, allowing de Ferran to make the final pass and claim his second career victory. This summer, the finishes have been even more frantic. 2 races ago in Detroit, Greg Moore came from 3rd to 1st on the final lap around the Belle Isle track. Then in Portland, Marc Blundell, Gilles de Ferran and Raoul Boesel produced the closest finish in series history. Today, the attention turns to Cleveland. Hello and a very warm and sunny welcome from Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw to the 16th running of the Cleveland Grand Prix on the City Airport, a bumpy, fast and demanding track where Jacques Villeneuve won just 2 years ago on his way to the 1995 IndyCar title. Today we have 5 former Grand Prix drivers in the top 6 on the grid, the interloper being Gilles de Ferran, who spent most of his formative years in European motorsport. It's a glorious day for a race, temperatures in the mid-20s, spectators smothered in suntan lotion, but Jeremy, the main concern on the drivers' minds is trying to make it safely through that first corner.
Yes, it's awfully wide. It's up to 120 feat wide there. You can see on the left-hand side of the picture, and it narrows down really into the 1 or 2 car width. Here's an incident actually before the green flag a couple of years ago between Paul Tracy on the onboard camera there and Andre Ribeiro. There's Ribeiro again in front of de Ferran, so all action at the first corner.
So that's what we've got to be looking for in today's race. Will they make it safely through that first corner? The very wide main straight, one of the runways here on the airport, and what a strange track this is in many ways. Very unusual to use an airport as a race circuit, but now in its 16th year it's proved to be a highly popular track for the spectators, and they have turned out in massive numbers. We had something like 60,000 people here yesterday, and we've got quite a few more than that here today. Again, looking down there at turn 1, and then the scene around, you can see Lake Erie in the background of that picture, and quite a few boats out there enjoying the opportunity to sail close up to the track and get quite a good view.
Yeah, fantastic. There's actually the big ferry we can see out there as well, with actually the decks are absolutely lined with people. A fantastic view from the shores there of Lake Erie, and here at on the racetrack itself, it's really, as you say, it's much hotter today and much more humid. It's going to be a very warm day indeed in the office for Alex Zanardi and his compatriots here this afternoon.
Alex Zanardi will start on pole position, and there's the man who will be alongside him on the front row. The very same 2 drivers that battled for the win on the final lap last year, Gilles de Ferran and Alex Zanardi, who also started on the front row together here this year in Long Beach. Well, it's going to be a big battle between the 2 of them, but Zanardi, who was second fastest in this morning's warm-up, has had the edge over just about everybody this weekend so far, and proved that by taking pole position by over half a second. The points at the moment, though, see Zanardi down in 5th position, now on 70 points, 1 ahead of Jimmy Vasser, thanks to getting pole here, but Paul Tracy leads by 5 points over fellow Canadian Greg Moore, with Michael Andretti in a threatening-looking 3rd position. And remember, Michael starts on the 2nd row of the grid here today, alongside Briton Marc Blundell, who won the last round at Portland and who is superbly fired up to do well here this weekend again. A great qualifying effort from Marc Blundell. In fact, it's the best of his IndyCar career so far, and he will start right behind these 2. You're on board with Gilles de Ferran, who lines up 2nd on the grid, and Alex Zanardi, and they're just going out there to start the first of their parade and warm-up laps.
3 times around the track they will go before we get the green flag here, and everybody seems to be moving away solidly away from the grid. There is the pole sitter, Alex Zanardi. Most people here are choosing the option tyres, the softer of the 2 compound tyres here, and it's going to be interesting to see whether those tyres stand up here to the heat. Actually, for the fast ends, their option tyre, really only the inside of the car, the right-hand side of the car. The tyres on the right-hand side, I should say, are softer slightly than the primary tyres, but it's going to be interesting to see whether they stand up to the heat and humidity this afternoon.
Let's take a look at the grid then. Alex Zanardi, his last win came in the 3rd race of the season at Long Beach, and alongside him the defending Cleveland champion, starting from the front row for the 3rd time of the 97 season. Marc Blundell, his first career win coming just 2 weeks ago at Portland. This is his best career start. Michael Andretti, his only win came here in 91. Christian Fittipaldi had a great 4th place in Portland on his comeback. Maurizio Guterman has led 3 different races this season, but is yet to take a victory. victory. Behind them on row 4, Brian Herter, who's been very competitive this weekend. He was fastest in the morning warm-up, second fastest in Friday's qualifying. Andre Ribeiro, first time out in a Reynard, and his best qualifying performance of the year. Bobby Rahal, local man, is in 9th position. His first career win came in the inaugural event here in 1982, and Paul Tracy, the championship leader, is alongside him. Dario Franchitti's back in 11th place, but fastest of the 8 drivers making their first Cleveland start. Welter Salas was 4th fastest this morning in the warm-up. Greg Moore is just 5 points away from the top of the championship table at the moment. Raul Boesel had a fantastic 3rd place finish in Portland. Jimmy Vasser had his first DNF in Portland when hit by Parker Johnston. Scott Pruitt makes his 100th career start today. He was 3rd fastest this morning in the warm-up. Behind them, Parker Johnston, who's had 5-point scoring finishes in the first half of the season, but it's been a bit disappointing. But not as disappointing as Alonso Jr.'s, his worst starts in 1995 at Nazareth. He's got some work to do. Patrick Carpentier's finished every race this season so far. Alongside him is Michel Jourdain from Mexico in his second race in the Reynard. PJ Jones is the top of the Toyota-powered cars. He's got another Toyota-powered car alongside him, the car of Mad Max, on his first visit here to Cleveland. Then it's Juan Fangio overcoming some reliability problems in the last couple of races. Richie Hearn with a much modified Lola chassis this weekend. They've made an awful lot of changes to the back end of the car particularly, and the same for Adrian Fernandez Lola, but it doesn't seem to be having the desired effect just yet. So Adrian Fernandez lines up on the row 13 alongside Hiro Matsushita, who finished in the points here in 93. We've got the German driver Arndt Meyer back out again this weekend, and a new boy, Charlie Nierberg, his first start with the CART series, although he's raced in Formula Superveer here in the past. So the cars coming around on these parade laps now, and just looking at the shape of that grid, interesting, as I mentioned at the top of the programme there, Jeremy, that we've got quite a few drivers with Grand Prix experience who really have gone well in the qualifying here. Yes,
astonishing, isn't it? I just hadn't realised that until you mentioned it there, but five ex-Grand Prix drivers in the top 6, that is very interesting indeed. I don't think there's anything more than a coincidence in that.
But it is a track where the driver really can make a difference, isn't it, as Alex was telling us?
Yeah, he was yesterday, wasn't he? He was saying that here you can really take some chances and try and get the edge off the corners, so to speak, almost literally. And you can see there how wide these runways are, and through onto the taxiways they're going there. That's turns 3 and 4 as they're sweeping right and then left and back onto the other runway there. It is a fascinating track, and there are all the grandstands at the top of the picture. You can see the whole track from any of those grandstands. It is a wonderful place for the race fans here in Cleveland.
It is, yes, and a very popular part of the whole event. Again, you can see the boats in the bottom part of the picture as well, who are getting a good view. Cleveland has really gone through a rebuild process, a renovation process. It nearly went bankrupt as a city at the end of the 1970s, and in fact having the race here has been a major part of the rebuild process, hasn't it?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years ago there was talk about taking the race away from Cleveland. The calendar was getting cluttered up, and there were quite a few races within the Midwest, and Cleveland came very close to losing its race. Well, the whole city got behind a Bring the Race Back to Cleveland project, and they were effective. They raised the money to get the purse up to scratch, so to speak, and the whole city was behind getting this race back again. They really wanted the event here, and the fans here are talking, with their money today by buying the grandstand seat. The place is packed.
It is packed. There are people just everywhere as we were walking down to the booth trying to fight the way through the crowd, but it's fantastic to see, and everybody all set up to watch what should be a tremendous round 10 to the championship, a championship that has been so close over the last few races. And in fact, this year we've yet to see a win that is over 4 seconds. It's that close this season. A look then at the track, and a 2.1 mile track as they've decided this year. It was 2.3 miles last year, and they actually haven't changed the track at all, so that's slightly strange.
Yeah, cold winters they have up here in this part of the world, and perhaps this track has shrunk a little bit, 1/4 of a mile somehow off the race. It's awfully difficult to measure it, really. If you go around the inside of the track, it's quite different than if you go around the outside line of the track, so to speak. So quite different there. And of course that affects the fuel allocation for these cars. It's allocated on the basis of achieving 1.85 miles per gallon. So the cars start with 35 gallons on board, and the rest of the fuel, the balance of the fuel, is in the pit lane here. And it's going to be pretty close here. The pit windows here are fairly close. They should be able to do it on 2 stops. But this track, not normally a lot of yellows, and there's a very tight window there to make it on 2 pit stops.
We're getting ready for the start now, Jeremy. The car's beginning to line up now. This is on the penultimate straight. There are 2 straights connected by a right-left sequence as they come past the pit, so they're just coming down. Notice on the right there are cones there. That marks the entrance to the pit lane. Yesterday there was a concrete wall there. They've moved it. They've decided it was too dangerous to have the concrete wall there, so now it's just a line of cones, and we're coming around to start the first of 90 laps here at Cleveland. Watch the drama at the first corner. Look how wide the track is here as we go for green, and Alex Zanardi makes a great getaway. Watch over on the left-hand side of the picture. Fittipaldi trying to get down the inside of Mark Blundell. Blundell turns in, keeps it nice and wide. Brian Herter trying to squeeze through as well. But fortunately, the first few cars get through safely. Somebody just touches the grass on the exit of turn 1. But remarkably, it looks as though we've got everybody through the corner safely without any major dramas. And Alex Zanardi is the race leader from Gilles de Ferran in 2nd place. And against everybody's expectations, they made it through turn 1.
Tremendous stuff there. What a great driving. I mean, everybody was prepared to give each other room. There's no point in making a mistake on the first corner. They know that. All you can really do is lose the race there. So it's a great start by Alex Zanardi. Brought the pace up fairly slowly, got a good jump, able to make a good start there. Christian Fittipaldi, an excellent start there from row 3, and gets up a couple of places to run in 3rd place on this opening lap.
Yes, but you could see they were being careful. Blundell particularly decided not to chop the nose off Fittipaldi's car. He had a chance. Oh, Fittipaldi there, under braking, heavy braking there as they come into that right-left for the first time, taken in 4th gear at over 100 miles an hour minimum speed through that corner. Now down to the hairpin. They drop down to around 55 miles an hour here, down to 2nd gear, and Mark Blundell behind Christian Fittipaldi there. Fittipaldi in 3rd, Blundell in 4th place. Then it's Brian Herter in 5th, Michael Andrew, and looks as though Brian Herter's going for a move on Mark Blundell, and it looks as though he's got the inside line. In fact, gets past quite easily there in the end, and Blundell not as quick out of the corner as he would have liked, and he's now being pushed hard by Michael Andretti. You ride on board with the former champion, and Blundell seems to have some sort of trouble. It shouldn't be this easy, but look at Paul Tracy. Tracy's got up the inside of Michael Andretti, and Tracy gets past both of them. Fantastic move from the Canadian, who didn't start that brilliantly. He was down in 10th place on the grid, but now Michael Andretti has a little look at getting back past the Penske. Tracy shuts the door, and as they come out of turn 8 and onto the straight, Tracy just with the advantage over Michael Andretti, both of them having moved past Mark Blundell, who really is not going that quickly in the early stages. I wonder what his trouble is, but it's clear that the car is not running as effectively as it did in yesterday's qualifying.
Strange, isn't it? He was especially a little bit of concern to me this morning about rear tyre wear, and particularly with it being so hot. And there goes Bobby Rahal down the inside of Mark Blundell as well, so back another place now. Mark Blundell started 3rd, already back to 8th position, and we've only got 2 laps in the books.
And he's got Dario Franchitti right behind him now as well. Dario's running in 9th place. There you are on board with Dario Franchitti. And now he's got Mark Blundell in his sights, and Mark really does seem to be struggling in the early laps here. Put in that fine qualifying performance yesterday right towards the end of the qualifying session. Put it in 3rd place. He had a couple of races this year where he qualified in 5th position at the start of the season, but that was his best effort so far. But the car really is not working as well as he would like now. On board with Dario Franchitti. He had some troubles in qualifying yesterday. They had a cut tyre. They weren't allowed to go back out on the tyre, and it meant that they had to qualify on a different set of tyres than they would have really liked, and that they felt didn't help them very much. We've just had some news though that this car, Bobby Rahal, number 7, has picked up a black flag because he wasn't properly in line when the start took place. So Bobby Rahal has picked up a black flag. He's going to have to come into the pits, running at the moment in 7th place.
Yeah, he won't like that. Bobby Rahal, of course, as you said earlier on, Ben, he won the first race here in Cleveland in 1982. He's the only driver actually to compete in every single race here at the Burke Lakefront Airport. And poor Bobby Rahal, he's been 85 races since his last victory in 1992, and this won't do his cause any good whatsoever.
No, great shame for the experienced veteran who's been very much on the pace this weekend, although in qualifying it didn't quite work out for him, and he qualified down in 9th position in the end. But Rahal always a threat when things are going well, as we saw in that race in Brazil earlier on this season, which he lost by just a drop of fuel in the end. Paul Tracy, though, is looking very much better than we've seen so far this weekend. Penske have been struggling to get this car to perform as they would like. The cars have to be lifted a little bit on the ride height here for this track. It's so bumpy out there. They have to lift the bottom of the car up a little bit, and they've been struggling to get the car to handle right. in that configuration. Meanwhile, Bobby Rahal now comes into the pits. Quite a long run down the pit lane here on the limiter at 60 miles per hour. And of course, that's going to drop him way, way down the pack. There's Jimmy Vasser a little further down. He's in 10th place with the yellow and orange car of Scott Pruitt right behind him. And then behind him is Andre Ribeiro running in 12th position. Remember, Andre Ribeiro driving a Reynard. There it is with the yellow nose cone. Very distinctive car. And interesting to see a long way down. In 13th place is Greg Moore. And meanwhile, you're now watching the battle between Guelta Sales and Alonso Jr. They're also a long way down with Sales 14th, Alonso Jr. in 15th as somebody runs a little wide, kicks up the dust. But no major problems there. And it's interesting to see quite a few of these front-running drivers, particularly Greg Moore and Alonso Jr., this far down the field.
Yeah, and Ribeiro as well. He started off 8th. He's been as low as 15th he was a couple of laps ago. He's now back up to 12th. Of course, one position gained when Bobby Rahal came in the pits here, but still he's making some progress there after a fairly tardy start, let's see. But the race certainly begins to settle down now. And as you say, a good move by, there is Guelta Sales there, running in 14th place at the moment. Pretty good effort by the young Brazilian driver, right behind Greg Moore. There is Scott Pruitt trying to make a move on Jimmy Vasser. That's for 10th place, not this time, as they go into turn 1.
Getting close between those two. Scott Pruitt made a couple of mistakes in Portland, coming out on the main straight there when he spun the car in the damp conditions, and he felt he was just being a little too over-aggressive. And it looks as though he's deciding to play things a little more carefully, at least in the early stages of this race. We look back from Jimmy Vasser's car. The positions at the moment after 5 laps. Zanardi leads from De Ferran, Fittipaldi 3rd, Herta 4th, and Paul Tracy already. He's moved up to 5th place. Welcome back to the Medic Grand Prix of Cleveland, and we're looking down the field at the moment at Andre Ribeiro. He's dropped back a place behind Greg Moore. He just got a little wide onto the grass, and that gave Greg Moore the opportunity to go through. But what we must remember, Jeremy, this is really the first time Andre's had a chance to drive the Reynard on full tanks and in anger in the race.
That is absolutely true. And the team really has done a phenomenal job this weekend to get to grips with the car so quickly. But certainly Andre himself, under race conditions, he's had to break some old habits. He was really struggling with that Lola. There was no confidence from the back end of the car. The back end of the car just felt like it was not connected to the front end, and he was really struggling with that. And he's now got to overcome the habits that he's had to try and save his life, effectively driving a Lola. So the car is a lot better to drive, but he's just got to get himself up to speed, and he's in very much a steep learning process right now in the early stages of this race.
Yes, and up against a lot of teams and drivers who've been working with the Reynard all season, so they know its foibles perfectly. They know exactly how to get the best out of the car, and an intense competition between all the Reynard teams. But don't forget, it's not just Reynards out there. The Penske's and the Swifts aren't going badly either. And you're on board a Swift now. That's the car of Michael Andretti. He's down in 6th position behind Paul Tracy in the Penske. And these two, having sorted themselves out a few laps ago, they've now settled down a little bit. We've had 10 laps out of the 90 so far, and the top 5 cars are separated by something like 5.6 seconds at the moment. So it's all staying very close. Certainly not a case of Zanardi disappearing off up front. The gap between Zanardi and De Ferran, first to second, is some 2.2 seconds. That gives you an idea of just how close and how competitive it is in these early stages of the race. Paul Tracy continues on his way, chasing after Brian Herta, and Herta definitely one to watch here this weekend. He's been very quick all weekend, a little bit unlucky in qualifying yesterday. They didn't quite get it right, but he likes this track, has always gone well here, and he could be one to watch in the latter stages. Yeah,
as you say, always goes well. He had his best finish was been here. It's equally his best finish, at least. 2 years ago, 95, he was 2nd place here. He's done another couple of 2nd places since then, but he's always gone well here, and qualifies well, races well, loves the place, loves the track. It's really his home crowd now as well. He's based only a couple of hours away, just outside of Columbus. He is a native Californian, but he now considers Ohio to be his home. And there we're looking at Herta, behind him Tracy and Andretti, just thinking about looking down the inside. Not at this stage though, for on board again now with Michael Andretti in 6th place and chasing after Paul Tracy.
Yeah, this is getting quite exciting between these two experienced campaigners. Once again, all a little bit sideways on the brakes there for Andretti as he slowed down to around about 100 miles an hour. They're still pretty quick through those 2 sequences of corners. Most of these bends taken in 3rd or 4th gear, and he's just in 4th gear through the left-hander, up through the right-hander in 4th gear, about 110 miles an hour, building up to 150 just here, then back on the brakes, just a touch of brakes before the next right-hander, and then some staying in 4th, some going down to 3rd for this one, coming out of here at about 100 miles an hour alongside the concrete wall, and then accelerating back up through 5th, 6th gear and 180 miles an hour as they get back onto the brakes again and through this right-left flick that brings them onto the start-finish straight alongside the pits. And all sorts of fun and games going on as they begin to lap some of the back markers.
Yeah, Brian Herter there held up horribly by Charlie Neerberg there, who really was not paying attention coming out of that corner. Paul Tracy was able to fly past Brian Herter, and Herter did a good job there to keep Michael Andretti behind him. But there's plenty of room on this racetrack, and Charlie Neerberg, he was trying to get out of the way, but he just made the wrong move. There are the two cars coming off the corner, and he actually pushed Herter off the road onto the grass.
Yeah, so Charlie Neerberg in the yellow car pushing the shell car of Brian Herter wide there, and Paul Tracy managing to slip past. Let's take another look at that one from above. Do we get that in the bottom of the picture? There it is, you see, and Neerberg really should have been much more aware that Herter was alongside him at that point. He obviously realised the way he cut right across to the other side of the track, but it was too late then. The Texan Charlie Neerberg, slightly older than most of the other guys, has basically brought some money along to buy the drive with the Paint and Coin team, has raced in the Atlantic Series in the past, and his main worry, Jeremy, as he told you, was to keep out of everybody's way, but he hasn't done that, according to that.
No, he really is. He's a wonderful gentleman, Charlie Neerberg, and he is achieving a lifetime ambition here, but he really has got to realise that this is the big leagues. And there's no room for his sort of driver, I'm afraid, at this level of competition. And I think we'll find him parking the car fairly soon. I think he'll realise he's out of his depth. He knew after his first test, there he is, staying right out of the way there at turn one, and good job by him. But I think we'll find him parking the car fairly soon. If not, I think you'll see a black flag from Wally Dallenbach, the chief steward.
Yes, that's right. They won't want to see him getting in everybody's way. Meanwhile, we're watching the battle going on slightly further back between Jimmy Vasser and Scott Pruitt. This is the battle for 10th position, remember. Behind them, you'll get a glimpse of Greg Moore and Andre Ribeiro still in that battle. And this battle has been pretty close for quite a few laps now. The leader has now completed 13 laps. That's still Alex Zanardi, and he has a lead of just 2.7 seconds over Gilles de Ferran. It's really not much at all, with Christian Fittipaldi doing another fine job in third place. But Christian is going to struggle here today. Fitness is going to be an issue, and also the bumps are a big issue. He's still racing with pins in his leg, remember, after the accident in Surfers Paradise in Australia, where he broke his leg earlier this year. This track being so bumpy means their legs get thrown around a lot inside the tunnel that goes down towards the pedals in the monocoque, the carbon fibre monocoque, and that's going to make life very painful for Christian Fittipaldi as we go through the course of this race. But so far he's doing a fine job and holding on to third position. Still looking at this battle going on further back between Jimmy Vasser, who was on pole position here last year but didn't look anything like getting onto the pole this year, and Scott Pruitt right behind him, who's been a championship campaigner pretty much throughout the season so far, but he's had a little bit of a poor run recently. He's down in 7th position now. Yeah, and struggled all weekend to get a proper handle on his target, Reynard Honda. He was happier yesterday afternoon, but still he slipped back to 15th place on the grid. That's certainly not where Jimmy Vasser expects to be every week. He's been very consistent really this season. He's run very well indeed, but just not on the game this weekend. Julian Robertson, his chief engineer, just has not got the right handle on that car, and Jimmy has certainly been struggling. Just comparing the speeds, you can see the advantage that Zanardi has over him, particularly in the mid-segment of the track over Jimmy Vasser. That's where he seems to be losing the most in terms of average speed, and Zanardi's had that edge just about all weekend. That was a good shot, wasn't it, as he went under braking into the hairpin. Pruitt went out of view and then suddenly reappeared in view. There are the positions. You can see Mark Blundell is down to 7th position now, behind Michael Andretti, with Dario Franchitti still holding on to 8th, with Gugelmin behind him in 9th, and Vasser there holding on to 10th place. Up front, though, still the same story, with the Italian Alex Zanardi leading after some 15 laps. Just inching away, a tenth a second or so a lap. It's now out to just over 3 seconds. A steady 1 second back to Christian Fittipaldi in third place, but Alex Zanardi is actually coming up on a couple of back markers now. The two cars of Arndt Meyer and Hiro Matsushita are just ahead of him on the racetrack. So that's going to be interesting to see how he negotiates those two, and perhaps that will allow Gilles de Ferran just to make it a little bit closer. Now then, you can see this is him coming up on the back markers. Alex Zanardi going past Matsushita very cleanly and effectively, no problems for him there. And yes, there in the background, Gilles de Ferran, so he has opened up a bit more of an advantage now. And remember that Zanardi runs on the Firestone tyres, de Ferran runs on the Goodyear tyres. So we've got the two different tyre manufacturers up there. In the past, it's looked as though as we go through a race, the Goodyear sometimes seem a little stronger, but right now, Zanardi's going very well indeed, and we've completed 16 laps. The first pit stops, if we don't get any yellow flags, be around lap 30, we would think, either slightly before, slightly after lap 30. So we're about halfway to the first pit stop at the moment, and Zanardi doing a fine job up front, getting past the German racer there, Arndt who's doing a good job keeping out of the way, and they're still very much learning the trade of driving one of these cars, and that's given Zanardi just that little bit more of an edge over Gilles de Ferran, who now has the same task of lapping these slower cars.
There goes Gilles de Ferran, Hiro Matsushita, keeping well out of the way there in turn one. And there behind him is Christian Fittipaldi, who will try and make a move now as they speed along the back straight alongside Lake Erie and into turn 3 there. Nice shot of Gilles de Ferran turning into that corner. Here comes Arndt Meyer. There is Gilles de Ferran, and he's setting his sights still on Alex Zanardi, but Alex Zanardi's still just creeping away a little bit more.
Well, we'll have to see whether he can maintain that advantage, still keep pulling away Zanardi, who's had a bit of an up and down season. Very much one of the pre-season favourites for the title, but it hasn't really gone his way in recent times. He had the one victory so far this year. That was in Long Beach after a good battle with Gilles de Ferran on that occasion. But Zanardi very fired up, very determined to make the best of this particular race as de Ferran goes safely past Arndt Meyer, and now Christian Fittipaldi will try to do the same in the Swift. Behind Fittipaldi, still Paul Tracy running in 4th place. Brian Herter is 5th, and then behind him, there we are, Fittipaldi now just on board with him, going past Arndt Meyer, and you can see Tracy in the background, then Herter, and then Michael Andretti, all finding their way past Hiro Matsushita. So things really settling down a little bit at the moment. Drivers trying to look after their tyres, trying to make sure that they're not wearing the tyres too quickly. And on board with Michael Andretti as he now also makes a move on the Japanese driver. Back on board with Gilles de Ferran, chasing after Alex Zanardi. And de Ferran, who has led on many occasions so far this year, but it hasn't all quite come together for him so far.
No, he's been incredibly unlucky, it seems to me, Gilles de Ferran this year. Came awfully close, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago in Portland, and you know, he's always run well here. With Hall racing the last 2 years, 2 years ago he was extremely unfortunate not to come away with a victory. He actually tangled with Scott Pruitt, who'd been fast all weekend but had a problem earlier in that race, was actually running 2 laps down, and Gilles was not at all happy that Pruitt didn't make his job easy and get out of the way towards the end of that race, and de Ferran ended up crashing and lost the race, so that was a major disappointment for him. He came back, of course, last year. There was Mark Blundell looking to the inside of Arndt Meyer, who chops right across in front of him. Not made many friends over the last few races, Arndt Meyer, actually, I must say. But he's split up this pair again now. Mark Blundell had inched a little bit closer to Michael Andretti in their battle for 6th place, but now he's got to go and do that, all that work all over again. That's assuming he can get past Arndt Meyer. Yes,
well, hopefully he should be able to put a move on him soon, but it all means time lost to Michael Andretti. He gets through safely this time. Meyer keeps out of the way, but he has definitely lost a bit of ground. Interesting to see that Blundell now seems to be running okay and running pretty much on the pace. Last lap was a little slower when they got up into back markers, but those early laps he really wasn't on the pace at all. Looked as though he had some sort of problem, but then the car now seems to have settled down to a pace. Very strange.
Yeah, very strange. You know, in some earlier races this season, his teammate Mauricio Gugelmin was having some problems with the boost levels early in the race. The boost was fluctuating, really wasn't coming up to maximum boost. 40 inches of boost there. That's unbelievable. Poor old Brian Herter got charlied again coming out of that last turn, and again he has to fend off Michael Andretti. Michael Andretti, nice move there. Laid back on the outside, Herter defending his position on the inside. There's a classic manoeuvre by Michael Andretti, lies wide, gets a good run off the corner, but now Herter has a look back again into turn 3, can't pull it off.
So Michael Andretti moves up into 5th position now. Paul Tracy's in 4th place, as you can see from the charts, but now it's changed because Herter's no longer ahead of Andretti. Michael's taken the place, and Brian Herter is not going to have very good things to say about Charlie Neerberg at the end of this race, judging by the way he's been treated by the back marker so far. He is not going to be very happy at all, but the net result is Michael Andretti has gained a place, and we've now got 2 of the Swift chassis running in the top 5, so it's a good effort from the team. The Newman Haas team, of course, the team that ran Nigel Mansell towards his championship winning campaign here in 1993, and he was teamed up with Michael Andretti. And just looking at the speed trap figures around the circuit at the moment, you can see down here 171 miles an hour before getting on the brakes into the hairpin right, and then coming up to the point where it says 111, that's as they're accelerating up through the gears and running alongside the shore of the lake, then up towards the right and left. And that's an average, that's just about 94 miles an hour. That's a minimum speed through that, so that's a pretty impressive speed. There's still nearly 100 miles an hour through the bend itself, building up to more than that, about 150 again, then up through. Oh, we've got somebody off into the tyres. Now then, try and spot that one. Spot that one, Jeremy.
No, it's poor old Richie Hearn. He's had a horrible time with that Lola this weekend, and he's been very, very dispirited with the performance on that car. It'll almost certainly bring out the full course yellow the first of the afternoon on lap 22. It's going to be interesting to see whether anybody comes into the pits here. It's tough to make it on 2 stops on this racetrack, and lap 22 is a little bit early for the window, let's say, in order to be able to make it on 2 stops. I think we talked a little bit earlier, there don't tend to be too many full course cautions on this racetrack, and apparently we have a replay coming up here of the incident as the cars now are working their way through under full course caution through the scene of the accident.
Let's take a look then. Richie Hearn was coming down the straight towards the right-left before the pits, just lost it under braking basically, and around she went and hit both sides, hit the concrete wall on the inside and then the tyres on the outside. But that was really under braking, was really before he started to turn into the corner that he lost control of the car. And well, the end of, as you said, Jeremy, a very frustrating weekend for the youngster, who really, I think, is proving himself. Although he's having a tough season in a tough car, he really is a talent to watch for the future if he gets the chance. Of course, a season like this means it's always hard to raise the sponsorship and pick it all up again for the following year. And well, there you can see, just marking the tyre there already, maybe he'd actually picked up some sort of puncture there as he lost it on the brakes, so maybe it was actually a tyre problem that created it all in the first place.
It might well have been. Richie Hearn doesn't normally make mistakes, and he's a very, as you say, a very, very talented young driver. Extremely frustrated over the last few weeks, as is the team owner, John Della Penna. And it was good to see at least Richie is okay. There is debris as a result of that accident across the pit entry road. The pit entry is actually closed at the moment in any case, under caution. But good to see Richie out of the car. He's really been disappointed with the performance of that car pretty much all season, and the Lola engineers have worked extremely hard. They thought they had a fix for that car. There comes a couple of people in the pits, not all the field by any means, and there's some jockeying for position there, some them diving in at the last moment. I'd say 60-40% at least of the people are staying out on the racetrack and not coming into the pits. But one of the people in the pit lane is the race leader, Alex Zanardi.
That's a bit of a surprise to see Zanardi coming in at this point in the race. And there's interesting, there's some consternation down in the pits, because some of the teams are saying that the pits are closed, they're not open, that these guys should not be into the pits yet, and yet these guys have obviously decided the pits are open. Now this is down to the CART officials to decide whether the pits are open or not. And that sign would mean that the pits are closed, because we need to see a plus sign to indicate that the pits are open. So this is very strange indeed. This could be a complete disaster. There's Max Papis running down the road, so I don't know what's happened to him. But that is very interesting as the leaders come into the pits, but the pits are supposedly closed. This is going to cause all sorts of controversy about whether these guys should have come in or not. Now then, here's a replay. Can you see the sign over to the left-hand side? We can't really see it from this shot. We couldn't see whether the P was there or whether they got the plus sign. No, the P was there. Look, the P was there. Zanardi should not have come in. Now maybe the team was calling him in, but he should have seen that the P was still there, and that means the pits are still closed. They have to do another lap before being allowed into the pit lane, and that could be a disaster for the Italian. The pits are now open officially, but that's a little bit late for Zanardi. Now, of course, by coming in, he sort of set the pace. Everyone else followed him coming in, but it was Zanardi who decided, first of all, to come in, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's that's going to cause quite a lot of issues. There is Chip Ganassi on the in the target pit, and I think what will happen is that the people that did make a pit stop will be told to go back to the end of the line, which of course they will be in any case after making their pit stops. But the crucial thing is now, yes, okay, after these people make their pit stops, then the people who had made their stops under the closed pit, there's the green, you can see the green P there on the left-hand side of the screen. That means the pits are now open. The red or pink or whatever it was sign that was at before, it signifies the pits are closed. So yeah, all sorts of funky stuff going on, isn't there?
Now, an interesting point for Michael Andretti. He apparently came into the pits, but he didn't get service. He didn't stop for fuel and tyres. Will he be penalised? So there's a question for the race organisers to try and sort out. Of course, all this means good news for Gilles de Ferran, who's left it until it's been allowable to come in. Christian Fittipaldi behind him, so that will move him up into second position. And what a confused situation this means. But basically, it's a genuine mistake from Alex Zanardi. Down to him. The sign was there. It showed that the pit lane was closed. It's down to Zanardi, and it's down to the other drivers who followed his lead. It was up to them to decide whether to come in or not. And a lot of drivers made the same mistake. Chip Ganassi there in the pit lane is absolutely furious. But what can he do? The mistake has already been made. And where Alex Zanardi is third in the queue at the moment, behind Mark Blundell and Gualter Sales, who have not come into the pits to make their pit stop. So Blundell is the genuine leader of this race now. The tyre wall still being rebuilt where Richie Hearn went off, and there is the blue and red car of Mark Blundell, the winner of Portland, now leading this group around. But we've got controversy because Alex Zanardi and a bunch of other cars came into the pits. They thought the pit lane was open. Let's hear from the pit lane, Richie Hearn.
Pretty much blew the right rear tire as I was coming down the straight there, and it just that was it.
We talked about the lull. He had all kinds of new parts on the car, but didn't make it go any faster. I mean, what's next?
Well, we had a lot of expectations for this weekend, and we had a lot of new front wing, new gearbox, and I think the fact that the track is so bumpy really kind of nulled those changes out. Our car's been not very good on bumpy tracks, and I still think the changes were good, and I look forward to maybe some better changes for the smoother tracks coming up.
Okay, well, unfortunately, the next race at Toronto is bumpy too.
Yeah.
Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Yeah, here's... Go down and talk to Dan Lugerbuehl about a possible...
Problems down there for Richie Hearn. That was a great shame to see him out of the race, but the main thing is it's caused all these other problems with whether the cars should be into the pits. And interesting that Zanardi's just picked up another problem. He's got a blend line violation, which means when he came out of the pits he did something naughty as well.
Yeah, he obviously tried to pass a couple of cars who were already out on the racetrack. It's a bit nebulous down there at the end of pit lane. Actually, the pit exit road is parallel to the racetrack, about 50 yards to the left, going down towards the first turn. And in fact, the pit lane actually goes farther than the first turn. They have to come back again and rejoin the line. It's a little bit tricky down there, and obviously Zanardi has been accused of making up some positions between the blend line, which is at the end of the pit road, where the actual pits are, so to speak, and the re-entry of the racetrack. So I think another penalty there for poor Alex Zanardi. He's going to be hopping mad inside that car.
He's not having a very good afternoon, really, is he? There is Max Pappas' crew packing up. We did see him down at the end of the pit lane walking away. I was right. His car is off at the side of the track. We haven't actually seen quite why. There now are all the people who've got to go through to the back of the pack. Now, they were the guys who stopped, including Dario Franchitti, unfortunately. He was one of those guys to come in. But watch also Paul Tracy, championship leader. He's going to have to be down to the back of the queue, along with Maurizio Gugelmin, Michel Jourdain and Juan Fangio. And apparently they've decided for Michael Andretti, although he didn't stop and put any fuel on board or change tyres, that he's going to have to go down to the back as well. Yeah, so the rule is being adhered to, and Michael Andretti is also a major loser in this situation. Now, the cars have completed 27 laps at the moment. Here's Michael's stop. He came in. They went to put fuel on and tyres, so they did actually change. We thought that they hadn't. This is interesting. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Tried to get away without releasing the fuel hose. And that was the problem there, obviously, that when he came into the pits, so a bit of confusion.
Yeah, I think that was actually when he came back in the following lap, actually.
Right.
There's a whole load of cars around him there, and not very many people came in first time around, so that's awfully confusing and a great shame. And particularly bad news, of course, for Michael Andretti, because he did what he thought was the right thing by not taking on service and going on around a racetrack, but now he's penalised himself again, because he had made an extra stop, he's farther back in any case, so double whammy there for poor Michael Andretti. It's not his day, is it?
It's not his day either, so I wonder whose day it's going to be. There's quite a few guys up there, but Mark Blundell leading, but the problem for him is that really he should be pretty much into the pit stop window here. I would think he's going to have to make a stop fairly soon. This yellow perhaps lasting longer than they thought, and PacWest perhaps gambling a little bit on it with being a fairly short yellow flag, but it's taking a while, and that means that he's probably going to have to stop fairly soon. If he's going to take advantage of this yellow and not stop under green flag racing conditions and really lose a big chunk of time, then he's going to have to stop fairly soon in the next couple of laps. We'll have to wait and see. Perhaps both he and Gualter Sales will decide to stay out there for a little bit longer. With all these changes that are going to have to be made, the the guilty cars who came into the pits when the pit lane wasn't officially open, having to be moved to the back of the grid. It's going to take perhaps a couple of laps to sort that out. Meanwhile, few people are finding other ways of enjoying themselves here on this bright and sunny afternoon in Cleveland. Some pictures from the lake itself, Lake Erie out there, and absolutely wonderful setting, a great way to watch the race. And if the race isn't much happening, well, you could just take a dive off the boat instead. Splendid for them, cooling down nicely out there. Unlike most of the spectators here who are boiling sitting in their grandstand seats, there is Mark Blundell, the British winner of the last race in the championship, the Portland race. What a superb victory it was in the closing moments, the closest finished in CART history as well, as Blundell snatched the win from Gilles de Ferran in the closing few moments. It really was a well-earned victory and such a good result for him after the disappointment in Detroit just a couple of weeks previously. And great for Pat West as well, the first victory for Pat West in an absolutely remarkable performance all round, really. But we've just got to see what happens this weekend. Is Mark Blundell going to have that sort of good fortune again?
Yeah, it's a bit of a gamble there by staying out on the racetrack. He is the only person now who has not made a pit stop. I think Gorta Sal is actually on the chart here. He's not shown as having made a stop, but he's dropped from second place a couple of laps ago right down to the back of the pack, so I think he must have come in on the previous lap, although we actually couldn't see him here from our vantage point, I must admit. But Blundell there, he's hoping that he can make his one stop on schedule here, and then everybody else is going to have to make two stops. That's what he's gambling on right now. And the longer this caution goes, of course, the less chance of that working in his favour. So when he does make his pit stop, he's going to fall to the back of the line, and then it's a question of how much progress he can make, whether he can keep pace with the leaders so that when they make their stop later on, he can get back on schedule, so to speak, and perhaps come out in front. But it's an awfully tough one to know just now.
Just looking at this graphic we've got, you can see Mark is very much into the fuel window. The other guys, Zanardi and Tracy, who've only stopped recently, only done 5 laps, as you can see from their last pit stop, a long way off it. And of course, most of these laps have been under, well, they've all been under yellow flag, so they haven't been using that much fuel. Mark has up until around lap 34 to make his first stop, but he's going to have to do it by then, otherwise he'll be out of fuel. He's experienced that already this year at Detroit. He won't want to do it again. And so it will be, we'll just have to see when he decides to come into the pits. They'll be keeping an eye on when CART are going to go green flag racing once again. It looks as though the other guys are beginning to sort themselves out, and that's probably what's going to take a few laps to determine where everybody should be in the queue. Those guys who made the mistake of coming into the pits when it was closed, now having to drop back down the order and position themselves properly in the CART, now waiting for them to do that. Now we've got Chip Ganassi in the pits. Let's hear from him.
Alex now as we speak, because they're trying to change the order of the cars on the back straightaway. They get a word with Mike Hall in the meantime. Mike, I know you guys are trying to sort out the order of the cars. Chip, are you done? What happened on that pit lane violation?
Apparently what was said over the CART radio and what was shown on the sign were two different things, so we're just trying to figure it out right now.
You heard that the pits were open when in fact they weren't?
Yes.
Thank you, Chip. Obviously he's got some more important things to do right now, guys.
Well, that's interesting. They obviously, they're saying that the CART team said over the radio that the pit lane was open, but it hadn't been changed up here on the pit lane entry, so that's the cause of the confusion. All the teams are tuning into the CART broadcasts, and they can hear when the officials say, for example, that pit lane has been opened. So that he's saying that it had been opened. CART are saying that it wasn't open. Well, they'll all sort themselves out soon. Blundell leads the pack at the moment. Back to Cleveland, and we've got under a lap to go until green flag comes out and the race gets underway again. It's been a little bit of a confused time, but it means that Mark Blundell is now leading, but he hasn't been into the pit, so effectively Gilles de Ferran is the man best placed. He lies second on the road, but he's been into the pits already. Christian Fittipaldi is behind him. Brian Herter then, followed by Jimmy Vasser, Greg Moore, Scott Pruitt, Andre Ribeiro, Alain Jr. and Patrick Carpentier. And of course we've lost the other guys like Alex Zanardi, Paul Tracy down to the back of the group now.
But the people that are now at the back of the group there had to make that stop as a penalty, actually came into the pits again and took advantage of that by topping up with their fuel. So they've now done 6 or 7 laps fewer than the people that stopped earlier on, admittedly under the yellow, but that'll give them a little bit more of a leeway for when they next have to make their pit stop. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the course of the next 20 or 30 laps. But certainly Mark Blundell isn't going to be able to go out there stay out there for too long before he's going to be in the pits himself. That'll put him way to the back of the pack.
So Mark Blundell leads them round as they get ready for the green flag to come out once again and get racing away. 1/3 distance completed here. Still 2/3 of the race to go, and anything can happen. This really could be anybody's race once again, as we've seen all season. Very topsy-turvy races. Mark Blundell heads out. Oh, and he no, so nearly spun it there as he got on the power. The turbo kicked in, the back end let go, but he kept it under control beautifully. But that was so close to going off, and he's wide into the first turn, and that gives de Ferran the chance to nip through. Revenge for Paul, and perhaps, although it's early stages in this race, de Ferran and Fittipaldi both nip past Mark Blundell, and Mark forgetting perhaps that those tyres are not fully up to temperature, both on the gas and on the brakes, not getting the sort of grip that he was expecting through the first couple of corners. And now Gilles de Ferran leads, with fellow Brazilian Christian Fittipaldi chasing him in second position, and Mark Blundell now down to third.
At least. What a shame for Mark Blundell there, caught out on all counts there. And we hear that car number 4 will be brought in for a penalty. I think that was for... what was that for?
Pit lane, I think it's for the pit lane.
The blend line violation.
That's Alex Zanardi. So Alex Zanardi's got to come in. Now that we've gone green flag racing, Zanardi has to come in. His disastrous day is turning into even more of a nightmare at the moment, and expect to see Zanardi come in. Look how far down now Michael Andretti is, down towards the back of the queue. There's Paul Tracy, championship leader. Bobby Rahal's a long way down. Frank Kitty down there. There is Zanardi. He's not come in yet. He should get the black flag this time around, but he should have come in then, I think. Well, he might be given a lapse grace. They're waving the black flag right now. Look at this mayhem going on down here. Walter Salles in the middle, Bobby Rahal on the inside. Rahal nips past Walter Salles, and also Adrian Fernandez gets past, as Dario Franchitti also trying to get through, and does. So it's all changed down towards the back end of the field. Yeah, and also a little bit ahead of those two, Greg Moore came past the pit slow. I'm not quite sure whether he'd made a mistake coming out of turn 10, but certainly was as slow as they came past here. Andre Ribeiro shot past him into 7th place. So we'll have to keep our eyes open for Greg Moore and see whether he is still out on the track and up to speed. Well, Franchitti and Rahal struggling down there, and let's just see exactly where they are. That's the battle for 20th place at the moment, with all the changes that have been made. And Dario Franchitti down in that position. There's Alex Zanardi, but he's got to come into the pits, remember, at the end of this lap. So let's see if he does respond to that black flag after leading this race and looking as though he was set to win it. But he hasn't come in again there, Jeremy. He's decided to stay out there, and he is going to get into big trouble if he doesn't come in fairly soon. Zanardi has radio problems, though, we've been told. Well, that's what the team say, but he still has a black flag out there for Zanardi, and he's got to respond to that very, very soon. Otherwise, he's going to be in big trouble. So he continues round. De Ferran is leading at the moment, and his advantage, something like 1.1 seconds at the moment. Bit of debris out on the circuit, couldn't quite spot who that was from. I'm glad to say we've been joined up in the commentary box by, well, glad in some ways, not in others, as Zanardi gets it very crossed up there. Very nearly lost it completely as he was trying to get past Matsushita. We've got Max Pappas up with us. Max, tell us what happened to you. Why are you out of the race?
Yeah, first of all, we had a problem with the engine, and we were running leaner and leaner to try to save fuel, and the engine was getting tighter and tighter, and the engine just gave up. As soon as the yellow flags came out, it was a sad race for us.
Oh, and Mark Blundell's now coming to the pits. Look at this, Blundell, who was up amongst the leading few, but he didn't make his pit stop, remember. He now comes into the pits under green flag racing conditions. This is going to drop him a long way down the order. Strange strategy from Pac West with Blundell there. We'll just have to see whether this gives him a chance to make it through just on 2 stops, but he won't be the only one being able to do that. So it doesn't seem to have gained him much. Zanardi, meanwhile, is also into the pits. There's the number 4 car. And that was 4 coming out of the pits wrongly. Let's just watch them. Let's see if we follow them coming out of the pits here. This is where there can be problems as they come back onto the circuit. And Zanardi picking up a blend line violation there. Max, the drivers presumably were warned about that in the driver's briefing.
Yeah, definitely. We have to really be careful about that, because the pit exit is really tough, and it's a bump in the exit. You can lose the car very easy when you have new tires on.
What are the conditions like out there? It's very hot today. Was it a struggle in the car?
I tell you, that out there is really, really hot. We're struggling, especially because this track eats up the front tire really much, and you get a lot of understeer in the car. So you have to play with the car to try to reduce the understeer.
Well, we've seen a very strange situation. I suppose you weren't really fully aware of what was going on with the pit stops, because at that time you were actually retiring. But we've had a few cars coming into the pits, a few not. Presumably, again, you were told about this pit lane being open in the driver's briefing.
Yeah, that's what we say. We were going to have pit lane open, and we could carry speed in the pit lane. you know, until the 60-mile mark. You know, it's pretty fast going into there. You know, it's quite dangerous as well. But you know, I think they did a good job to take the wall out from yesterday, and the track was much safer today.
Good. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us up here today, Max. Sorry to see you out of the race already, and your friends and family watching us in Italy at the moment, they'll be very disappointed, but I'm sure they'll be glad to hear from you.
Yeah, a big ciao to all my family at home, and you know, I think, you know, and I really hope all the European fans will watch and follow us as much as they can. And ciao, Mama. I see you soon. Ciao.
Thanks a lot, Max. And as he heads back down towards the pit lane, a rather hot and sweaty looking Max after being in the car for a while there. Charlie Neerberg is into the pits at the moment, and the guy who was getting in everybody's way somewhat earlier on, he seems to have some sort of engine problem because they've taken the cover off that car. And that's probably a bit of a relief to everybody else who was struggling to get past him earlier. Meanwhile, up front, Gilles de Ferran is our race leader from Christian Fittipaldi. The gap is 1.4 seconds. Third is Vassar. Fourth is Brian Herta. Fifth is Scott Pruitt. Sixth position is Greg Moore. Seventh, Andre Ribeiro. Alanza Jr. is up to 8th. Patrick Carpentier 9th. And Parker Johnston is now in 10th position. It really has all changed around.
Yeah, he does. And as you said, there indeed mentioned the car number 99 of Greg Moore in 6th place. So he was able to get up to speed again. I think he just made a mistake coming off that turn 9-10 chicane. Was able to get back past Andre Ribeiro. And so still running strongly in 6th place there, the player's car of Greg Moore.
Now then, Jeremy, you're keeping the lap chart as we speak. Now, are any of those guys who were down the back, who were a long way down when they had to be repositioned from that pit stop, any of them making much serious progress at the moment?
The best of them actually is Michael Andretti, who's up into 11th place at the moment, shadowed there by Paul Tracy. So they're beginning to make some moves up there, but the other guy's really quite a long way back. Certainly Dario Franchitti is back in 17th place at the moment, and after their pit stops, Alex Zanardi and Mark Blundell 22nd and 23rd, so at the tail end of those on the lead lap.
So disappointing for two of the European former Grand Prix drivers, Zanardi and Blundell, not having a great afternoon. The battle you're watching is between Jimmy Vassar and Brian Herta, the battle for third place now this has become. And Herta, who's had an up and down time, particularly dealing with Charlie Neerberg earlier in the race, now very much on the pace once again with Jimmy Vassar there. And Jimmy Vassar going better than we've seen so far this weekend, holding on to that third place very effectively, although dropping away a little bit from Christian Fittipaldi. The gap something like 4 seconds now between himself and the Budweiser car of Fittipaldi there. In fact, you see the two leaders, and they're the gap to third.
Yeah, and I think Jimmy Vassar perhaps holding up Brian Herta. I think Brian Herta is pretty sure he's faster, but he's not able to get past the target car of Jimmy Vassar, his former teammate, of course. A couple of years ago, these two drove both for Chip Ganassi, and then Brian Herta was able to move across to Team Rahal, but quite a train of cars behind them there. There are those two, then there is Scott Pruitt behind him, then Greg Moore and Andre Ribeiro, and Alanza Jr. Showing his best form of the weekend. They're in 8th place ahead of Patrick Carpentier, also is showing much better form today than he had done the rest of the weekend.
Yes, and we've just got to watch out for the likes of Michael Andretti, Paul Tracy to see whether they can move up beyond these guys. It is possible to overtake here, as we've seen in the past. It is possible to run alongside other cars, but it's still not easy once you get into the slipstream of the guy ahead. The usual problem, the car loses downforce, but at least it's not impossible here. Some heavy braking required at the end of the next straight that they're coming onto now. So we get a good run through this corner, as Brian Herta has done, gets in the slipstream now. Are we going to see him move out under braking? Heavy braking for the hairpin, the slowest corner on the track. Perfect way to go past, but will he still have it on the exit of the corner? Yes, he will. He's come out of the corner well, hasn't gone too wide, and there the perfect execution of a passing manoeuvre from Brian Herta as he goes into third position. Vassar back down to fourth, and Herta now goes chasing after Christian Fittipaldi.
Great move, as you say, by Brian Herta. Clinical move there down the inside. Jimmy Vassar, no chance of fending off that attack from Brian Herta. Great friends, these two, both from California originally. But it's good to see that, you know, Jimmy Vassar's not about to do anything stupid. He could see that Brian Herta had a clear shot at him. No point to do anything silly. He doesn't make it terribly easy. He makes it squeeze him down the inside a little bit. But Herta had the momentum there, cleanly through into the corner and takes over third position from Jimmy Vassar.
Two drivers who've worked their way up through the ranks, Jeremy, and indeed you've been involved a bit in their progress through the ranks, bringing both of these guys over to Europe at formative times in their career.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, we do a thing called the Team USA Scholarship, sponsored by Valvoline, is the main sponsor here, and also Tasman Motorsport. Steve Horn, a great mentor of the program. There is a move again. There is the move again of Brian Herta getting past Jimmy Vassar. Since 1990 we were doing that program. Jimmy Vassar actually was the first recipient of the scholarship in 1990 when over did the Formula Ford Festival with Lannon Racing. Had a bit of a a disastrous time, but he learned a lot and he really enjoyed the experience. The following year, Brian Herter also went across into the Formula Ford Festival at Brands Hatch and really created an excellent impression. He finished 11th in the final and really did a fine job that weekend for Team USA.
Well, it's great to see these drivers having had the opportunity to come over to Europe and race and now doing such a good job in their home series. Massa, it's being reported on the radio, suffering from a fair degree of understeer and also trying to look after the fuel mileage a little bit. That is going to be a big issue here this afternoon, looking after the fuel because of the various different pit stops that have been made and some guys coming in early. This track does not normally see many full course yellows. Having said that, of course, we've had one already today. We've only ever had 2 full course yellows at this track in the 16 years it's been running. 2 in each race, that is, or as many as 2 in any race. We've seen a lot more yellow flags this year at some tracks like Portland, for example. Last time out, Detroit, we saw a lot of yellow flags in the early stages of that race. And let's just hope that it can keep it fairly clean and that we can watch the race develop as those guys who've dropped to the back of the field now try and fight their way up the order. They're the man running in 6th place, 2nd in the championship at the moment, remember. 5 points only the gap between himself and Paul Tracy. We've got the race in Canada coming up next weekend, Toronto, and I'm sure that Greg Moore would love to be the championship leader as they go into the Toronto race and snatch it from Tracy here at Cleveland. At the moment, Paul Tracy's only just in the points, down in 12th place. And meanwhile, we've got problems for PJ Jones, who comes into the pits.
Shane PJ has been doing a very good job again. Once again, he was the quickest of the Toyota drivers there for All-American races. Castrol and Jockey, the sponsors of his Reynard Toyota. Looks like he might possibly be in for routine service, but I think it's a little bit early for that after his having stopped under that previous caution. So perhaps a problem for PJ Jones. Shane, nice job he's been doing.
That's right. Let's look back at this battle once again. Nice battle going on here. Vassar, Pruitt, Moore with Ribeiro, Unser and Carpentier not far behind as well. This is the most exciting part of the race at the moment with the leader, Gilles de Ferran, an advantage of 1.8 seconds over Christian Fittipaldi. So you're not missing anything up front at the moment. De Ferran in control of this race. Christian Fittipaldi keeping him honest but not really being able to challenge. Herter now in a fairly lonely 3rd. So it is this battle for 4th position that is the main focus of the race. And when you've got someone like Greg Moore in the middle of it, well, you can expect some fireworks because this guy is a hard racer. He will take any opportunity that is half given to him. He'll be through a gap just as quickly as you can see it. And Moore now trying to line up Scott Pruitt for an opportunity to go through.
Yeah, they're coming into the turn 9 chicane there. Quick flick left and right there. They're taking the corner at about well over 100 miles an hour. Eyes there on Scott Pruitt with Greg Moore behind him, Andre Ribeiro behind that. There's car number 2, that's Alonso Jr. Behind him, Patrick Carpentier. A little bit farther back there, Parker Johnstone and Michael Andretti. And there's some very tight racing going in there in the middle of this race. We've got 44 laps in the books now, so coming up to half the distance.
Halfway point, and Gilles de Ferran is still our race leader at the moment as this battle rages behind. The red car of Jimmy Vassar still leading the group. And then the orange and yellow car of Scott Pruitt. The blue and white car, there it is, of Greg Moore, the young Canadian who's taken his first 2 wins in the series this year. Dramatic victories they were as well. 1 in Milwaukee, 1 in Detroit for this car. And Greg Moore, the young Canadian, following in the footsteps, I suppose, of Jacques Villeneuve to a large extent. There, PJ Jones down in the pits. Let's see if we can hear anything.
We're pretty far down. I think we're over 10 miles an hour off on the straightaway right now, and it's pretty hard to overcome and try to pass people, with that kind of deficit.
All right, thank you.
I hope you could hear that. It sounded like a little bit low for us, but PJ Jones out with gearbox problems. It's been confirmed, and disappointment for the American racer, part of the All-American Racers, run by Dan Gurney, who've had a bit of a tough season, it has to be said. That Toyota engine still not really on a par with the others, as he was explaining there. Back to the battle that's going on. Scott Pruitt is at the head of that little group at the moment. Jimmy Vassar seems to have escaped a bit further up the road in the Target Ganassi car. So then it's Pruitt, Greg Moore, Behind more is Andre Ribeiro, the Brazilian, in the car with its shocking yellow nose cone. You can't really see it at the moment because it's tucked in so closely behind Greg Moore's car. There he goes, and Alonso Jr. behind. At least Ribeiro will be happy to be in a group that's in the top 10 and in with a chance. He's in 7th place at the moment. He's had a torrid season in the Lola chassis, first race out in the Reynard, and he's putting in a fine effort here, but he's got Alonso Jr. there in the white and red, Marlboro Penske right behind to take advantage of any mistakes or slip-ups that he might make.
Yes, it's still fairly, still a long way to go. Just over halfway through this 90-lap race. So no one's really wanting to make too much of a move just in case they get it wrong and lose more ground than they try and make up. So there's still another round of pit stops to go. They want to make sure that they have the fuel mileage, of course, to get through to just ensure they have to make one more stop. It might be fairly close to a few of these guys. And I think most of these guys will be running the car fairly lean on fuel at the moment, just trying to eke out that fuel so they can get through with just one more pit stop.
Yes, it looks as though everyone's going to keep things under control a little bit for the moment, looking after fuel and then build it up for an exciting climax towards the end. There's the shell car of Brian Herter, the bespectacled youngster in the Bobby Rahal team. The two of them working very similarly, look fairly similar as well in a sort of junior version of Bobby Rahal, but they fit in together perfectly well. They've really created an excellent team between themselves. And Brian Herter in 3rd, one of the quickest cars on the track at the moment. His last lap, in fact, was quicker than any other of the front runners. And so Brian Herter catching up a little bit to Christian Fittipaldi in 2nd place, but the gap's still around about 3.5 seconds between himself and Christian.
Yeah, it was almost 5 seconds about 5 laps ago, so he's just chipping away a little bit, Brian Herter, able to move in just a little bit towards Christian Fittipaldi, and certainly drawing well away now from Jimmy Vasser. He's pulled out 5 seconds since he passed him just 7 laps ago. So there is Brian Herter, and quite a way gap there to the 4th place car of Jimmy Vasser and the rest of that large pack behind him.
So Gilles de France still our race leader here. And there Christian Fittipaldi running in 2nd place. He must be feeling the heat a little bit by now, with some 50 laps completed out of the 90 scheduled here, and Fittipaldi still not fully up to fitness with that broken leg now much recovered but still not fully recovered, and his training schedule of course very limited because of that, and he must be feeling it now, Jeremy, a little bit, the pain. At least he's not too far behind de Ferran, so that can keep him going a bit.
That's right, that'll keep the adrenaline pumping, and that'll certainly help Christian Fittipaldi. He really is doing a fabulous job once again this afternoon, particularly as we talked about yesterday. Had a fairly nasty crash about 10 days ago in testing at Road America when a front push rod broke on the car under braking, and that caused him to have quite a nasty accident at turn 5 at Road America, but able to get away with that one. Back in action here, there he is waving acknowledgement to, I think that was Hiro Matsushita as he went past him to put a lap on the 24 car.
Yeah, I think it might have been Matsushita, it might have been Salles actually. I think he's down there somewhere as well. So Walter Salles, another Brazilian, who's not going quite so well now. He's dropped down the order. We mentioned him earlier that he'd lost a lot of ground. Let me just update you a bit on some of the drivers you might be interested in. For example, let's just run down the order really. You can see it in the top left-hand corner of your screen. You can see Dario Franchitti's down in 15th position. And Marc Blundell is down in 20th place, and that really largely as a result of their deciding to stop when they did. And that put him right down behind the others. Zanardi, our early race leader, he's down in 16th position. 60.4 was his last lap, but that's pretty much the same sort of time as the leaders are doing. Gilles de Ferran and Christian Fittipaldi doing much the same sort of speeds. There you can see the fast speeds at the moment from Fittipaldi around the track, 171 on down to this point, then accelerates out of this one into the next kink at 114 miles per hour, then accelerates further up the next straight towards the right-left flick as they go from one runway to another runway, and travelling a lot quicker than the aeroplanes normally do at this point on the ground.
Yeah, big shuffling here for that big group of cars dicing for 5th position. They actually all got held up behind Hiro Matsushita as they came out of turns 9 and 10, and a big fan out down under braking at turn 1, pandemonium down there, and Scott Pruitt lost a place there to Greg Moore, and there is Alonso Jr. tucked close in behind the car of Scott Pruitt, trying to take away, that would be 6th position.
So this has all changed things around a little bit. That group that we were watching so much early on, look how close it is, all the cars. Ribeiro's right at the back of the group, just being passed by Tracy as well. Ribeiro lost a couple of places when we left you there. He dropped down behind Carpentier and Unser, and now he seems to be losing more ground. On board with Michael Andretti now, who's in 11th place, or he was last time round, although things have all changed a little bit with that gaggle of cars sorting themselves out. Johnston gets past Matsushita, and there the Panasonic car of Matsushita is now the next to be lapped by Michael Andretti. He slips through safely and still tows Paul Tracy along behind him. So these two desperate to make up for the lost ground earlier in the race when they both came into the pits when they weren't supposed to, and now running in 10th and 11th places as we're getting towards the pit window now for the second stop. So we're still a few laps away from them, but it won't be too long before you start to see some other cars coming into the pits and make the second round of stops, and then they've got to try and squeeze that fuel allowance right the way through to the checkered flag at the end of it all. Up through that left-right sequence of the backside of the track, Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy, with Andre Ribeiro now having to drop down to 12th position. Bozell 13th, Rahal 14th, Franchitti in 15th, and still holding off, fending off Zanardi, who's just put in a quick lap actually, Zanardi, a 59.370 from Alex Zanardi. That, I think, is probably the fastest lap we've seen in the race so far.
I think it is. His teammates are running fairly well too. Jimmy Vasser, Brian Herter, the last two laps, has not made any impression at all on Christian Fittipaldi. In fact, he's dropped back now to some 5 seconds behind the Brazilian driver. Meanwhile, Christian Fittipaldi has actually inched a little bit closer to Gilles de Ferran, just 1 second between those first two cars.
Well, there, we're just taking a little look at who's watching Adrian Fernandez. 75 relatives he's worked out are watching him back home in Mexico City, and they're watching it on TV Azteca. It's lunchtime for them as they watch this race and cheering on Adrian Fernandez, who of course has had such a difficult season this year. Teammate to Andre Ribeiro using the Lola chassis. We've mentioned it many times how much they're struggling. But Adrian, a winner last year. It's almost 12 months now since his last win, actually. That was in Toronto last year, and it hasn't really been anywhere near winning a race so far this year. But he's still got plenty of support down there in Mexico, and he's still got a bit of support in the UK as well, because Adrian was a racer in the British Formula 4 Championship some years ago, and I'm sure there's a few guys watching back in England who remember Adrian's efforts with fondness, and are hoping that he gets a bit more luck as the rest of the season progresses. So he's down in 20th place at the moment, long way down, not really in with a chance of getting anywhere here this afternoon. The leader's completed 53 laps now. The Gilles de Ferran still leads by just over a second from Christian Fittipaldi. Brian Herter still in 3rd place with a fairly big gap back to Jimmy Vasser in 4th.
Yeah, and Alex Zanardi still continuing to move up the field here. He's up now to 15th place, just got past Dario Franchitti last time around, and certainly at this stage in the game, Alex Zanardi is the fastest man on the racetrack.
There you are, you can see that de Ferran, Fittipaldi and Herter are now all within their pit stop window, and we'll expect to see them coming into the pits fairly soon now. They're not going to be able to go much longer before they run out of fuel. So we'll just have to wait and see exactly how long it is before they come in. Just looking up at the screen, which doesn't seem to be giving us the current number of laps completed. We've actually completed 56 laps now, and Gilles de Ferran still with the control of this race. On board with Christian Fittipaldi running in 2nd position though, and putting in this fine drive. Former Grand Prix driver himself, of course, Christian Fittipaldi, and then come over to join in the CART Championship. That was in 1995. He was racing for the Arrows team. He moved over to the United States. With the Arrows team, he finished a couple of 4th places that year in 1994. Not a bad effort at all. But since he's come over here, he's been quite a star. He was runner-up in the Rookie of the Year contest in 1995, and then joined the Newman Haas team in 1996. Finished in 5th place overall in the championship, and now on board with teammate Michael Andretti, who still pushing hard and still trying to move up the leaderboard after losing that earlier time. Still in 10th place at the moment. Parker Johnston is the next car ahead of him to try and pass. Let's just ride with him for a moment. Yeah, well, as I say, of course they change the picture, don't they? So we don't get a chance to listen to the engine for a while. That Ford Cosworth power unit, but he's getting down the inside of Johnston. He's done it. He's got past a man who's in 9th place. So Michael Andretti takes the position, and Andretti continues his fight back up through the field. Next one on his list is Patrick Carpentier.
Yeah, who's been struggling this weekend there is Michel Jourdain Jr. coming into the pits. He'd been running in 17th place, actually right ahead of Mauricio Gugelmin. Gugelmin unable to make a move past the Mexican driver there, whereas about 5 laps ago, Alex Zanardi got past him. Zanardi and Gugelmin had been running together, but Gugelmin trapped behind the Mexican, and Zanardi since then just rocketed away. And here comes now Gilles de Ferran into the lead to make his second pit stop with 58 laps in the books.
So race leader Gilles de Ferran into the pits. Vital pit stop this one. Is Gilles heading for his first victory of the year on the track where he took the win last season. That was with a different team. He's well fired up to take victory here today as the fuel goes on board. The methanol fuel, remember, that they use, methanol used in IndyCar racing, less economical than using normal petrol, but it has a reduced fire risk to using normal fuel. Although, of course, if it does burn, it burns without a visible flame, so that always makes life a bit difficult, but it's not actually as likely to catch fire as petrol, and that's part of the reason for using methanol. Paul Tracy into the pits as well in the number 3 car. He was in 11th place. As he comes back out, you can hear the engine on the limiter, and that's because they've got to stay within that 60-mile-an-hour speed limit as they come down the pit lane. He then takes his finger off the button, takes off as he comes down to the exit, and now our race leader is this man, Christian Fittipaldi, the 26-year-old nephew of Emerson Fittipaldi. Interestingly, Emerson, one of only 2 drivers to have won 3 races here at Cleveland. It's in the family to have success here at Cleveland, and Christian is driving superbly well at the moment. His father, Wilson Fittipaldi, here also this weekend, always a firm fan of Christian's and always there in support.
He is indeed. He's here at every race cheering on his son, and his son really is doing a fabulous job. There is Alex Jr. also in for routine service as flashes past us. Alex Zanardi now hot on the heels of Bobby Rahal. That is actually for 10th place right now.
Greg Moore in the pits as well. Let's see how cleanly that is. Away he goes. It looked like a pretty good stop for the Canadian. The Forsyth Racing team doing a good job in the pits at the moment. And Moore comes back out. It'll take ourselves a lap or so to sort it all out. Are we going to see Christian coming into the pits this time? Yes, we are. He comes down the left-hand side of those cones where they've taken the wall away from yesterday, and make things a little bit safer. Fittipaldi into the pits. Now then, what we've got to do, out of our pit box, out of our commentary box here, we've just got a bit of a view of the straight alongside the pits, and hopefully we'll be able to tell you whether he is going to be able to get out in front of Gilles de Ferran when he comes back out. Remember, there was only a second between these two, battling for the lead when Gilles de Ferran made his stop. They seem to have a problem. They haven't got it jacked up properly. They can't get the right rear tyre on. The jack has not worked properly, the onboard jack. Christian Fittipaldi hits the steering wheel in frustration. They haven't got that right rear on, and they cannot get it on yet. He cannot believe it. The disappointment for Christian Fittipaldi. Oh no, what is going on? They cannot get the car up in the air. Now they finally get it up in the air properly, and they can get the rear tyres on. Michael Andretti, meanwhile, is also in the pits. It looks as though he's had a cleaner pit stop, and there's a battle between them as they come out of the pit lane. Who's it going to be across the blend line? Ooh, it's close to see. I think Michael just got the edge there as they come out of the pits. Christian Fittipaldi, suddenly the prospects of getting on the podium seem to have evaporated, and what a disappointment for the Brazilian, who's driven such a superb race up to that moment.
Heartbreak for Christian Fittipaldi. Here's a great dice. There he is back on the racetrack now, finally, but all hope of victory long gone now for the Brazilian driver.
Very, very sad indeed for Christian Fittipaldi. What it means is that Gilles de Ferran will now have a very comfortable lead indeed when they come round at the end of the next lap. Adrian Fernandez comes out of the pits after a looked like a fairly clean stop for Fernandez, the Mexican, coming back down out of the pit lane to join on at turn 1, and we've completed 61 laps now. And in fact, Alex Zanardi has come up to the lead of this race with Gilles de Ferran having made his pit stop. Zanardi, though, will have to stop soon as well as Mark Blundell battles with Brian Herter. Let's just see where we are in that little battle. Blundell gets past Brian Herter there, or stays in front of Herter. Herter at the moment is running in 3rd position. So this is an interesting tussle going on between these two. Finally, Herter gets past Mark Blundell, who's some way further down the order, having lost that time earlier on with the out-of-sequence pit stop. So, things beginning to settle down. Or does he? No, he comes back past Herter again. Great racing between these two. Blundell and Herter putting on a great display of what can be done here at Cleveland on this airfield circuit. It really does lend itself to overtaking and then repassing, and it's a great battle going on between these two.
And that is for position, I think, because Blundell, of course, made that stop after Herter earlier on, and they're now sort of on the same schedule, and there's all sorts of... There goes Gilles de Ferran. I haven't seen Alex Zanardi come past. I think he might have come in the pits.
So Blundell up there now in that battle with the pit stops. Our timing screen is deciding not to work very effectively at the moment, so Jeremy's doing a fine job on the lap chart, and that'll keep us up to date hopefully with what's going on in terms of the race leaders at the moment. Gilles de Ferran, it looks now with things beginning to settle down after those stops, is now our race leader, as we would have expected. He had a very clean stop, remember, as opposed to Christian Fittipaldi's disastrous stop in the pit lane. So de Ferran is the race leader, and he continues his advantage over Brian Herter by the looks of things. Mark Blundell, yeah, Mark Blundell now up there, but of course he will still have to make another stop.
We've not got a very good vantage point here. We're set well back from the racetrack behind the pits, but I'm going to try and keep this chart going, I think, Ben, and at least try and keep a track of who is where at the moment. Here comes Gilles de Ferran past the pits now, past our vantage point. Lap 63 in the books. He is the race leader, and in second place is Mark Blundell. I'd say about 5 seconds behind. Then is Brian Herter, and fourth place will be Greg Moore.
Greg Moore and Parker Johnson both together there at the moment, but Greg Moore ahead of Johnson at this point in the race. So de Ferran looking very, very comfortable out front at the moment. Nobody really up there to challenge him. Mark Blundell is quite a lot further back, and he still has to make his final pit stop. There's no way he's going to be able to make it through on what fuel he's got on board at the moment. We've still got something like 26 laps to go at the end of this one, and Gilles de Ferran doing a superb job out front, controlling this race very, very effectively at the moment. And just as he has been really from the early stages, except when Zanardi was just ahead of him. Of course, Zanardi we lost down towards the back of the group when he came into the pits when he wasn't allowed to, and that really has changed the whole complexion of this race. Crossed the line goes one of the other guys. Brian Herter still running very well there in third place, or in fact second position now. Yep, Herter second, Blundell third.
Other way around, actually, I think. Ben, to go past here, there's Greg Moore in fourth place, and then Zanardi is in fifth.
So Zanardi, yes, working his way up the order quite effectively now, up into fifth position for the number 4 car of Alex Zanardi. We ride on board with Bobby Rahal as he's some way further down, but Rahal, the local man here, with a lot of support. Everybody trying to hope that Bobby Rahal can pull something out of the bag here, on board with him from the other camera. This is mounted further down on the nose cone, gives you a very clear view as they come through this quick sequence, the right, the left, taking it over 100 miles an hour, building up the speed once again up to 160 miles an hour at this point, then slowing down fractionally into the left-hander. Let's just have a little listen to the engine working hard. So great onboard shots from Bobby Rahal there as the Ford Cosworth engine working hard. Meanwhile, Michael Andretti and Jimmy Vasser doing battle into turn one. Oh, they so nearly hit each other there. Michael Andretti just managing to squeeze past last year's champion, but he may not have got that position safe and sound yet as Jimmy Vasser tries to come back at him once more. Vasser still looking for the way past as they go up towards the right and left, but he doesn't quite make it through, and Michael Andretti therefore holds on to that position. He's lying in 7th.
Takes over, yeah, it actually takes over 7th position. On the previous lap, actually, Alanza Jr. also got past Jimmy Vasser. So that was, these 3 cars are all battling. We're on board here with Jimmy Vasser. There is Michael Andretti ahead of him, and ahead of there, just a second distance, so 2 cars. One of them is the car number 2 of Alanza Jr.
So Alanza Jr. running in 6th place. Our leader still de Ferran, though, up front at the moment. Mark Blundell still lying in 2nd place. With in 3rd position Brian Herter, number 8 car. Now there comes Mark Blundell into the pits. So finally he has to make that 2nd pit stop, and this is going to drop him way down the order once again. The winner of Portland is not going to have such a successful run here at Cleveland this weekend. They made their decision early on with the first pit stop not to bring him in under that yellow flag. It seemed to be a little bit of a strange decision, and I don't think they're going to be too happy about it later on in the day. Mark Blundell comes back out, but that's dropped him down the order.
17th position by my reckoning, actually right behind Dario Franchitti, so great shame after a super effort by Mark Blundell. Poor pit strategy. You win and lose by your decisions in this sport. If the caution hadn't have been so long, maybe he would have been in good shape, but that isn't the way it turned out. And on this occasion, the strategy did not work, or did not appear to work, let's say, for Mark Blundell.
So the situation means that De Ferran is now a leader from Brian Herter, who moves up to second. Greg Moore now up into third place, and that's an excellent effort from the Canadian.
And under pressure from Alex Zanardi.
There, in fact, is Greg Moore. You can see him, and Zanardi's not far behind. There's the red car, the blue and white car of Greg Moore. The red car target machine of Zanardi. Zanardi lining up Greg Moore for the pass here, looking to go up into third position. This is a great move from Zanardi. Drives around the outside of Greg Moore, and he said that he was making up time under braking. Well, that was a graphic demonstration of it. Greg Moore, though, seems to be in trouble. In fact, he is. There's smoke from the back of the car. It's not just Zanardi going quickly. It's Greg Moore who's in trouble. And there's smoke from the back of the player's machine. And it looks as though the Mercedes engine may be in trouble, or perhaps it's the gearbox that's causing troubles there. And poor old Greg Moore lying second in the championship, looking at a tremendous opportunity to close up in the points table to Paul Tracy here today, but it's not to be, and he slows it right down. He should be able to pull off the side of the track quite comfortably without causing any problems. Let's hope so, and we shouldn't get a full course yellow. They'll be able to get that car out of the way, and you can see very safely out of the way there. In fact, no problems for the other guys, but Zanardi now in third position. What a tremendous drive this has been from the Italian to try and make up for the lost ground earlier on. Where the situation is still that Gilles de Ferran is leading this race by around 9 seconds now, his advantage over Brian Herter, and Brian has around 4 seconds advantage over Alex Zanardi, who's moved up to third. Yeah, and he's in closing actually rapid. The last couple of laps he's taken a second off Brian Herter, so Zanardi now within 4 seconds and 20 laps to go still, so plenty of time for Alex Zanardi as we're on board with Michael Andretti putting a lap on the Teccardi Quaker State Lola there of Adrian Fernandez. Michael Andretti running in 5th position at the moment, and so he's also, like Alex Zanardi, managed to recover a lot of lost ground from when they were put down to the back of the queue earlier on in the race. But Zanardi's drive has been absolutely superb, fighting his way up to 3rd position, and as you say, there we can see some pictures. Actually, what we're seeing here are some pictures of people trying to repair wires, because we've lost our timing and scoring in the commentary box at the moment. So if things haven't been quite as they should be, that's the reason why, although we now have got ourselves pretty much sorted out with what's going on in the race, and they're going to get that timing and scoring system sorted out as quickly as possible and keep us fully up to date. But Jeremy's doing a fine job on the lap chart, so we know exactly what's going on, and I can tell you that Gilles de Ferran is still controlling this race, but the battles are going on further back as Bobby Rahal, they're involved in his own battle with Jimmy Vasser. So let's take a look at the leaderboard. The top 6 places, De Ferran leads, Herder second, Zanardi closing in 3rd, Alonso in 4th, and that's the best run for Al for a long time. Michael Andretti now up to 5th, and Scott Pruitt in 6th position. So Alonso Jr. definitely want to keep an eye out on the number 2 car, the Penske, and remember Penske still chasing their 100th CART victory. Well, it doesn't look as though Al's going to be in quite a good enough shape to win this one unless something dramatic happens to De Ferran and the likes, but it's still the best run that Alonso Jr. has had for quite a long time. Had a 3rd place finish earlier on in the season at Nazareth, but the rest of the time has been pretty bad news for the former champion. Today could be a chance to make up for some of that, but this battle further back going on well. Scott Pruitt and Bobby Rahal also at the back there. There's Paul Tracy battling with Christian Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi, who lost so much time earlier on in that pit stop, and Paul is running in 9th position, so this is the battle for 9th place as Christian tries to nip past the Penske. Oh, he nearly lost it there. The tyre smoke showing how late he was on the brakes, and that lost him a few lengths behind Paul Tracy once again. The big train of cars here. Scott Pruitt in 6th place, and there's a whole train of cars behind him. Some great stuff going on there. Gilles de Ferran passed us to complete lap 73. The gap back to 2nd place here. There comes Brian Herter, 7.5 seconds, and who is this battle? Oh dear. Yeah, that was just a replay of what happened when Christian got alongside initially at turn 1, and Paul was a little bit too late on the brakes there. That's what gave Fittipaldi the opportunity to have a look. In the end, it didn't quite come off, and we're back on board with Fittipaldi. As into the pits comes Michael. Michael is back into the pits now. Is this a splash and dash, or is it a problem? No, it's a problem. There's no work going on the car, and he said something sounding like oil or something like that, so maybe it's an oil pressure problem that he's got in the cockpit there that he can see on the gauges, and the team going to work. But what a disappointment for Michael Andretti, who was running so well, chasing his way back up the order, running in 5th place, but out of it by the looks of things now, and the end of the race for Michael Andretti. So the top guys in the championship not going well at the moment. Greg Moore is out of the race. He was 2nd in the championship before we came into this. Paul Tracy is still running. He's the leader of the championship, but he's not as well up as he would like to be. Gilles de Ferran is our race leader, but look at the battle for 2nd beginning to hot up as Arndt Meyer gets in the way of Brian Herter in the Shell car. Right behind is the target car of Alex Zanardi now, and this is the battle hotting up for 2nd position.
Once again, there Arndt Meyer. He's got to make a better use of his mirrors. He held up Brian Herter. Poor Brian Herter seems to be held up by just about everybody this afternoon. With a bit of luck, he'll do the same to Alex Zanardi. At least that's the way Brian Herter will be looking at it. But there goes Alex Zanardi. Great move down the inside there. Arndt Meyer able to let him through, and you can see the gap there is less than a second now. And there is the battle for 2nd place. We're on lap 75, and meanwhile, Gilles de Ferran is about 8 seconds up the road ahead of these two, but this is the battle to watch right now. 2nd position, Brian Herter. 3rd position, Alex Zanardi.
Yeah, just look at the pace Zanardi's caused Herter, and now the Italian so fired up after the problems in this race earlier on. When he came into the pits, he shouldn't have done that, and now having to make up for it. But what a wonderful recovery drive this has been. This is Paul Tracy battling with Jimmy Vasser just a moment ago. Oh, look at that. The contact made between them hit the side pod of Jimmy Vasser's car. That's ripped off one of the little winglets around the side pod area, and there is Jimmy Vasser now with Christian Fittipaldi just sneaking past, and Vasser in trouble on the grass all over the place. Vasser with the car not handling quite as it should do now, with bits of it having been taken off by Paul Tracy. Vasser is now dropping seriously down the order.
12th place now, Jimmy Vasser.
Yeah, and in fact just slipping past him there is Dario Franchitti. So Dario's down at that position at the moment in around 11th place. But Dario not having a good afternoon. He was one of the other guys to come into the pits earlier on, but he's just got himself back into the points just about, so maybe he can add to his tally, which he hasn't been able to do for quite a few races now. Top 5, top 6 there, you can see in the top left-hand corner of your screen, but it's the battle between Herter and Zanardi for 2nd place that we're really focusing on. De Ferran still with quite a good advantage up front. The gap between De Ferran and Zanardi, or between Herter and De Ferran is some 7-8 seconds, so this is the battle for 2nd place that really is the one to focus on.
Yeah, and they pulled well away from Al Unser Jr., who's now lonely 4th place, but a great run nevertheless for him, and then a good back gap also to Bobby Rahal, who's moved up very well indeed to 5th place ahead of Scott Pruitt. And there's a battle there between Paul Tracy and Christian Fittipaldi, and all right behind them are Patrick Carpentier and Parker Johnson. But this battle for 2nd place is the one we need to be keeping our eyes on. They're actually closing a little bit on the race leader and putting a pretty torrid pace, these two, but that I think is the race leader at the far end of the straightaway, turning into the 9-10 chicane with Gualter Salas, a lap car between them.
Now then, Zanardi really lining himself up for the move. Is he going to be fast out of this right-left? This is where there's a good opportunity to slip down the inside into the next hairpin, but it doesn't look as though he's close enough. Not quite far enough into the slipstream. He looks down the inside more to disturb Herter than anything else, and it almost worked because Herter was a little wide of his apex. There was never any way Zanardi was going to be able to really pass there, but he's just beginning to worry Herter. That's what he wants to do, just put some pressure on him, make him think about it a little bit, and perhaps if he makes a little mistake braking late, then Zanardi will look for the way past him there. Herter was a bit wide out of the previous corner. Zanardi's got the inside line and he sneaks up into 2nd place. It's great driving from Zanardi once again, put the pressure on Herter. Herter couldn't withstand the pressure, and he now is into 2nd and goes chasing after De Ferran, the man that he was leading in the early stages of this race.
And less than 7 seconds, I reckon, that last time around. So Alex Zanardi, he has a sniff of victory here, no question about it. The Italian is charging.
He is, and we've got something like 12 laps still to go in this race. There's an opportunity. There is De Ferran at the bottom of your picture. There is Zanardi at the top of the picture. Now putting a lap again on Gualter Salas, and Salas keeps well out of the way. There's no problem there for Zanardi. Doesn't really lose any time, but can he close the gap up to Gilles de Ferran? Look how hard he's trying, right out onto the dust out of turn 1. And again, we're looking at another exciting finish to one of the PPG kart races this year. What a tremendous sequence of races we've had. All of them have been closely fought. As I mentioned earlier on in the program, the biggest winning margin that we've had so far this year is under 4 seconds, and I think this race is going to be pretty much along the same lines. But are we going to see these two who battled it for victory here last year? Remember, very much the same situation with De Ferran and Zanardi battling in the closing laps. It's being repeated in 1997, and De Ferran can just get the information from the pit board, from the radio, as to how quickly Zanardi's going and how much he's closing that gap lap by lap. He goes past us. De Ferran goes past our commentary position now, and we wait for Zanardi to come past. Let's see what the gap is this time as they go through.
6.56 seconds between the two of them, so 2 or 3 tenths per lap it seems that Alex Zanardi is going to be able to take off Gilles De Ferran. By my reckoning, that's not going to be quite enough, but it's going to be awfully close.
It is going to be very close indeed. Zanardi still charging very, very hard indeed. Chasing after De Ferran. Remember, in third place, it's still Brian Herter in third position. Alonso Jr. lying in fourth place. Fifth position, an excellent fifth for Bobby Rahal, and that's one of the best performances we've seen so far this season from him. In sixth place is the number 20 car of Scott Pruitt. Behind him is the number 3 car, Paul Tracy. So Tracy will still have an opportunity to pick up some points here today. But of course he's seeing 2 of his main rivals, De Ferran and Zanardi, up front and running very well and picking up a much bigger collection of points. De Ferran comes out of the final corner again to complete another lap. Zanardi comes out of the final corner, and you can see that that gap has closed a little bit, but is it going to be enough?
5.63 over a second, and on that lap the leader Gilles De Ferran, by my reckoning, lapped in 59.8 seconds, so under the minute, and Alex Zanardi quicker even than that. He is flying, isn't he? Look at him.
Fantastic performance from the Italian here. He is desperate to get another victory. Only 1 win so far this season. That came at Long Beach, but Gilles De Ferran hasn't had a win so far this season. He's come so close on many occasions, particularly last time out in Portland, and it would be a sweet victory if he can achieve it. Let's just take a little look at the pass that Zanardi put on Brian Herter a few laps ago. Really, it was quite easy in the end. Herter was a bit sideways on the exit of the preceding track, and the preceding corner rather, and Zanardi was able to slip through. We're looking here at a replay of last year's dramatic pass. Remember this one, Jeremy? This was the pass of Zanardi getting past Herter for the win, although on that occasion at Laguna Seca. It was a pass that many people talked about for a long time.
It did indeed, and that was really a do-or-die attempt, no question about that. If Herter hadn't been paying attention, if he hadn't been watching his mirrors, if he'd have closed the door, they would have crashed, end of story. And Brian Herter knew that he wanted to finish the race at the very least. Maybe he could get past him again on the end of the lap, but this lap here, perfectly executed pass by Alex Zanardi, this time for second place, now sets his sights on Gilles De Ferran, the leader. 8 laps to go.
This is the battle further back as still Paul Tracy tries to make up some of that lost ground. Christian Fittipaldi, though, now alongside him once again, slips past Tracy. Can he hold it on the exit of the corner? Squeezed together as they come out of turn 1. But Christian Fittipaldi with the advantage over Paul Tracy. And it's a real battle that's going on down here, further down the pack. Tracy desperate to find points. But let's hear from Michael Andretti in the pits.
Run at the championship. Now you're out of this race. Is this going to be as critical this year in terms of the championship? Hope not.
If it is, we're in trouble. You know, I'm disappointed for sure. You know, to go this far, seemed like everything was going against us in the race, but we were still fighting back, and we were in 5th, fighting for 4th, and could have come out of here with the points lead. Now, who knows where we're going to be?
Tell us about that penalty situation when the pits were closed. You came in, didn't actually stop, went through, but still got penalized.
That's what I'd like to know what the deal was, because I never seen anything in there that says you can't just go through and not take on anything. You know, and when I came out, I actually lost, so it's not that I gained anything. So they're sort of making up the rules as they go along there. It's a little disappointing.
Frustration, dejection. I think that sums it up.
Still a battle going on further back, though, as Christian Fittipaldi trying to find a way past Scott Pruitt, and that's a good battle for 6th place. And indeed, he's got alongside him now. Fittipaldi's gone up into 6th position. Great move from the Brazilian as he gets past Pruitt. Paul Tracy now looking to also get past Scott Pruitt in the Firestone car. But look at this battle up front. Suddenly, this race has come right alive now, because Zanardi is within striking distance of Gilles De Ferran. And we've still got something like 6 laps to go in this race. race as the other car of Juan Fangio gets past. Oh, and he's contact there between Zanardi and Fangio as he went through. Zanardi is so determined, he's so fired up, he is not going to lose a fraction of a second, and he gave Fangio a tap as he went past. Fangio perhaps should have been more aware there were two cars coming up on him rather than just the one, but he soon found out because Zanardi nerfed his way past.
He did, and Fangio did well to keep in control of that car. I think he saw him at the last minute and jinked the wheel left. Did a pretty good job not to spin and take the both of them out there, but we've got a race on our hands here, no question. Alex Zanardi seriously faster than Gilles de Ferran. The only difference between these cars, they're both Reynard chassis, they're both Honda power plants. Firestone tyres on the car of Alex Zanardi, Goodyear tyres on the car of the race leader, Gilles de Ferran.
Look at this, he's gone for the inside line already, and de Ferran has to be wide now. Can he cut back on the exit? But Zanardi's taken the lead, and just as soon as he caught him, he went for the move, and de Ferran, there was nothing he could do about it. Zanardi is so fired up. We've seen the advantage he's had in qualifying here this weekend. A half-second advantage he had in the second session yesterday afternoon, and Zanardi is just in unbeatable form here today, and de Ferran could do nothing about it. We didn't really get a dice, did we? Zanardi decided to go past, and that was it. But you can see he's still trying very hard as you watch from the onboard camera. Look how quickly he's pulling away, but Zanardi is on the ragged edge. The question is, can he hold it all together? Don't get carried away, Alex, otherwise you could still throw a possible race victory away. Zanardi leads, de Ferran second, Herta third, Unter in fourth, Rahal in fifth, and Fittipaldi in a fine sixth place.
Boy, I think this race is all over by the shouting. There's a Chip Ganassi team there cheering on their man. Fantastic drive by Alex Zanardi. And you know, that earlier pit stop, that penalty might have played out in his favour because he was able to come in again and make that stop and take on a little bit more fuel. No problem for him then to run flat out towards the end. And Gilles de Ferran perhaps having to manage his fuel a little bit more. So that's an interesting piece. It's funny how the way the strategy sometimes works in your favour. And it seems like it's bad luck at the time, but it comes back and it's actually in your favour. So there it goes.
Well, when your name's on the trophy, I suppose that's the way it goes. Brian Herta running in third position. Another good finish in prospect for him here. He had his career best second place here at Cleveland a couple of years ago, and looks as though he's going to get another fine finish here again. Brian Herta behind him, still some good battles going on, but things just settling down a little bit. The two Mexicans are doing battle on the racetrack at the moment. They're the next two cars that Alex Zanardi is likely to put another lap on. Adrian Fernandez and Michel Jourdain together on circuit.
Keep running the same way you are. Keep running the way you are.
And we can hear just briefly there from Derek Walker talking to Gilles de Ferran. There is Derek Walker down in the pit lane, telling Gilles to just continue the way you are. Well, they can still get a good tally of points out of today. Second place, no disgrace. De Ferran, of course, will be disappointed at having lost the chance to win one, but Zanardi in such fine form. Just going back through the chart a little bit, Jeremy, what position exactly did Alex drop down to a little bit early on in the race? Can we
yeah, we can have a
check. We need to know how many places he made up.
I reckon he was all the way back to 23rd place on lap 35 after that stop, so he's come all the way back from there. It's a pretty good effort, huh?
It's pretty good, isn't it? 23rd position to take over the lead with still a few laps to go, and Zanardi, the Italian former Grand Prix driver who's now only his second season of the PPG Kart Series with the Chip Ganassi team, the team that took the title last year, and Alex himself had the most successful second half to the season of anybody when he took 3 wins in all last year. He was the Rookie of the Year, finished third in the championship in the end, and took wins at Portland, at Mid-Ohio and at Laguna Seca. He had pole positions towards the end of the season as well, and really was a fantastic debut season from the man who's now 30 years old. Started his career in karting like many of the top single-seater racers, of course, and raced mainly for Lotus in his Formula 1 times. He was a Benetton test driver in 1992, then moved to Lotus in 1993, had a huge shunt in 1993 at Spa, which put him out of action for a while. Came back and raced for Lotus again in 1994 when he replaced Pedro Lamy, who had a big accident himself, but then really never got the chance to progress in Formula 1 with a team that would give him the opportunity. Oh, look at that. As I speak, he's almost getting the front of his car chopped off by Michel Jourdain, but survives the moment. I should think Jourdain will be getting the blue flag around the track. Jourdain, of course, still involved in this battle with fellow Mexican Adrian Fernandez, and he's not really focused too much on the fact that the leader is right behind him. But just coming back to Zanardi, didn't get that chance in Formula One to make the progress he should have done. Competed in the GT series a little bit in 1995 with the Lotus Esprit, and then at the end of the 95 season tested for Chip Ganassi on the recommendation of Reynards themselves, and Chip Ganassi so impressed with the performance of the Italian that he gave him the chance to go racing last year. Out on the track we can see that there's a problem for the other Toyota powered car of Juan Fangio that's pulling off to the side of the road. So it looks as though all three Toyota cars are now out of this race, and that's a disappointment for them after getting some finishes in the last couple of races. But we are now into the closing stages of this race, and Zanardi's still a little bit concerned about this pair of battling Mexicans that's right ahead of him. Yeah, it's really, I think it'll be the white flag this time by, I think, so he really doesn't need to worry too much about it. Well, actually, there's actually Jourdain slowing dramatically as he takes the white flag there. There goes the two race leaders, and also Gilles de Ferry cleanly through there. So Alex Zanardi on his last lap, just over 2 miles to go, I should say. There goes Brian Herter in third place. And farther back, some great dicing going, even for the last couple of points. The two British drivers, Mark Blundell and Dario Franchitti, dicing over 11th place as they came past here. So Zanardi on his flying final lap here at Cleveland then, and he is coming through to take a remarkable victory. The performance of the season really in terms of pure driving. We saw him lead the early stages of the race. We saw him drop down to 23rd place when the pit stop went wrong, when he came in when he shouldn't have done. But in the end perhaps it helped him a little bit. He still had to fight his way up through the order, and he's shown that you can really pass people in this form of racing. He's overtaken his way to come through to the front of the field, and Alex Zanardi is coming through to take the checkered flag here at the Grand Prix of Cleveland. Zanardi wins his second win of the year ahead of Gilles de Ferran. Success for the Target Chip Ganassi team, and Alex Zanardi driving an absolutely superb race to take the victory. Tremendous drive by the Italian there. What a wonderful effort by him, by the entire Target Chip Ganassi team. There goes Brian Herter across the line in the distant third place, but nonetheless an excellent performance by him. There is Alan Jr., he'll be pleased with that. And Bobby Rahal is in 5th place, closed up well towards the end of that race. So there you see the top 6, Christian Fittipaldi in 6th place after a tremendous drive as well. The Zanardi, the race winner. Good battles going on further back, Jeremy. Just coming across the line, this gaggle of cars as they come across with Bozell, Blundell, all just racing right the way through to the checkered flag there. Fantastic for 8th place there. Scott Pruitt just getting a nod over Mark Blundell, who moved up 3 places the last couple of laps. And then Parker Johnson got past Dario Franchitti for 10th on that final lap, I reckon. So Dario Franchitti back to 11th, Patrick Carpentier 12th, and right behind him with Jimmy Vasser, Andre Ribeiro, Mauricio Goujuin, who also passed Raul Boesel on the last lap. So great stuff all the way down the field, but a jubilant and justifiably so Alex Zanardi. Superb effort. Paul Tracy finished in 7th position in the end, so that gives Paul Tracy some 6 points. That'll give him 106 points in the championship, but for Alex Zanardi, the race winner, that picks him up 20 points, and that puts him on 90 now. So he now is just 16 points behind as he does a celebratory donut in front of the packed grandstands here. They'll love that. Right in front of our commentary box, in fact, and he's doing it perfectly. Cloud of smoke, and the crowd really enjoying the display from Zanardi. It's exactly what he did in Long Beach as well. Got it quite right this time on the second run, but he is such a happy young Italian. Fantastic performance from him, and after the disappointments of the last couple of races, Portland, where they really made a bit of a mistake on the tyre choice, Detroit, where he got taken out on the first lap, he really is enjoying this one. He's obviously got plenty of fuel left, hasn't he? How would that go down in Formula One though? Yeah, that's right. Really loving it and celebrating it in fine style. Alex Zanardi, just look at that. The crew can't believe it. They thought it was all over earlier on. All the entire grandstand, everybody's on their feet cheering for Alex Zanardi. What a great effort. A wonderful way to finish the race by this flamboyant Italian driver. Brilliant stuff, and you just imagine Alex's emotion. He is a very emotional guy, of course. Drives a racing car beautifully smoothly. He's not particularly aggressive driver in terms of the way he drives the car, but he's an aggressive racer, the way he gets past people, as we saw today. Just look at that. He was so angry earlier on in the race, but just look at the delight now at taking the win.
just won a championship. Hey, $90,000 plus the 10 he had in hand for winning the Marlboro Polo Run. Alex Zanardi, have you ever had a better drive going all the way back to, I believe, 22nd to come back and win a race?
I don't know. I have to check my files. Maybe Mike Knight may know. Today is his 50th win, and I'm so proud to be the one that gave us this present.
Thanks.
Fred full target for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, but more than everybody from my boys. They did terrific.
How frustrated were you when that blend line violation put you toward the back of the field?
Well, I didn't exactly know what it was because we missed radio communication from the beginning. And I had a lot of problems, but hey, if every time I have some problems I go that fast, I'll take it.
How about the victory celebration with all these 360 donuts you're spinning out here in this airport?
Well, I'll tell you that, the owner engineers and which they did a terrific job, by the way, are going to be pretty angry with me tonight because I probably overhyped the engine, but hey, this Burby had to give me that. I think I deserved some fun after such a race.
Well, Alex Zanardi, the pandemonium continues. Let's go to Bob.
What a fantastic performance from Zanardi. That penalty he had to come in for earlier on as well, dropping him so far down the order. But coming through to take the win, as you can see, the top 6 places, Zanardi, De Ferran, Brian Herter in 3rd, Alonso Jr. and Bobby Rahal 5th, Christian Fittipaldi 6th, Mark Blundell in 9th in the end, Dario Franchitti in 11th, so both of them scoring points. That's good news. Jimmy Vasser just outside the points, and well, in terms of the points table, not a huge difference. Paul Tracy will still be the leader of the championship. 2nd place for Gilles de Ferran, though, and that brings him up onto 93 points. It just means that everybody is getting closer and closer. We've got Zanardi on 90, De Ferran on 93, Michael Andretti on 91, Greg Moore on 95, and Paul Tracy just a little bit further ahead on 106. So with the race in Toronto coming up next weekend, we should have some great fun, Jeremy.
Yeah, 2 Canadian drivers there, Paul Tracy and Greg Moore at the top of the standings, and that's going to go down very well indeed. There's always a tremendous crowd on hand at the exhibition place there in Toronto, and they've got 2 people to cheer for next weekend. It's going to be a heck of a race.
There's confirmation of the points then, with Paul Tracy in 11-point lead, but just look how close it is behind him, 95, 94, 91. We'll be bringing you full coverage from Toronto, the Canadian round of the series. From Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw, I hope you've enjoyed the race here today. Make sure you join us again next week on Eurosport. Bye-bye for now.